What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Friday edition of On Cue. Rich Quinones here. We're going to switch gears a little bit. Hour number two, talk a little hoops, a little association with our good friend Johnathan Marshall at John_Marshall3 on X, and of course, sports reporter anchor at WMUR. Very good friend of mine, very good friend of the show for a long, long time. And I know he's dealing with the cold and the snow, but we're going to warm his heart a little bit. We're going to warm his heart because first and foremost, we got to talk tanking in the friggin' league. We got to talk about tanking in the association, the league that you love so
Love
much.
it.
First and foremost, how are you, brother?
I'm good, Q. It's a mild 40 degrees, 50 degrees up here in Manchester. So life is good. What can I say?
Hey, listen, you wake up, it is a good day. I don't know so much about the Pistons and the Spurs. Fast approaching 26 straight losses, respectively, from these two squads. So I want to get your thoughts first on this. This is something that's so prevalent that the NBA was kind of dismissing it, right?
Mm.
But if you think about these two teams, and if you really think about it, the Pistons, if you look at their last two head coaches, Monty Williams, Dwayne Casey, both were coach of the year
Mhm.
prior to these stops. I was under the impression from Adam Silver, we're trying to rid tanking because we want to boost viewership. And then you look at the Spurs that got the franchise player. Obviously, Pop's time seems to be out of hand unless they get another lottery pick. So, and by the way, I can throw in a third team. No one's
Mhm.
talking about the Wizards. I mean, Washington is a flat out bad team. So, do you believe these teams are just obviously tanking, or it's just bad draft picks, bad players, and now they're trying to play with the hand they've been dealt.
Well, we can tackle it team by team, right?
Yeah.
The Wizards are a comedy show. That's a joke.
Yep.
Anytime you lean on Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma as your top two players, you're an
Not good.
unserious basketball franchise because obviously Jordan Poole with the Wizards, I mean, with the Warriors, he proved himself to be a promising prospect, but he was playing behind a Steph Curry, a Klay Thompson. He wasn't a
Yeah.
focal point, right? And there was always questions about his efficiency, his shot selection. Now you put him in Washington, no veterans, right? Alongside of Kyle Kuzma, what did you think was going to happen for Poole? I got a ring, I got the bag, I can do whatever I want out here on the
Right.
court. So what are you expecting? So for me, the Wizards, you're in series, first of all, because your two guys are Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma, talented players. But if you're trying to win a championship, either one of those guys are number one or two options on a championship team to me. So that's just what the Wizards are. Um, Detroit, Detroit is interesting because when you hire a guy like Monty Williams, you give him the biggest contract. He got a big contract, history making contract. And so you expect with his legacy, with his resume, there would be some type of direction and order. I look at the Pistons, to me, it's a collection of talent, but there's no direction, right? You have a guy like Jaden Ivey who should be getting time in a situation like this, but for some reason, he wants to give Killian Hayes starter minutes. To me, that's coaching, right? And so you can say, well, Cade Cunningham is a talented player, but there's no shooting around him. Okay, but for me, if I'm paying a coach this much money, you got to figure it out. There's enough
Mm-hmm.
athleticism on this team. They're young. Figure out a way to make this work. Like,
Let me ask you real quick: is Cunningham a building block, or if you stick him on another team, he's just a role player?
I said, I've had this thought about Cade Cunningham. He's a really good player. I like him. Is he the type of player that can alter the course of a franchise, like we seen with the Luca, with the Steph? To
I
be
don't think
honest, I
so.
don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't think he has that explosive, just ability to have that impact for a franchise. Maybe a number two option on a championship team, yes. But to what they're trying to do, I don't see Cade in that light. I really
Mm-hmm.
don't. And
Yeah.
so for me, Detroit is just a collection of talent. They're throwing darts on the wall and I hope one or two or three of these guys stick. That's what I see. Right. Now to the Spurs, I mean, they got Vic. So to me, this year was all about Vic and him developing and figuring out his way in the NBA. They don't have a point guard. Jeremy Sohan is not a point guard. If you watch him play, if you watch highlights, you don't need to be an expert in basketball to figure out a point guard is controlling the offense, can give others involved, Sohan does not have that ability.
Right.
To me, he came out of Baylor. He's a hustle guy, energy guy, defensive guy. And for some reason, I understand the thinking and logic behind it. Let's get this guy comfortable with the ball in his hands and creating. But to me, there's a thin line between forcing it and letting a guy just naturally evolve into a guy that can make plays with the rock. And so when you have a guy like Sohan who really isn't a point guard, isn't going to be a point guard, you got a young big and Vic, he pretty much has to set up the offense for himself. If Vic is an OKC, we're talking about Vic like how we're talking about Chet Holmgren, right? Chet Holmgren has SGA. He has a collection of guys who can actually create for him and set him up. That's why we're seeing the success that he has. If Chet is in San Antonio, maybe it's a different conversation. So I just think Vic is in a place where he's not able to fully excel because he's having to figure out and do things on his own because there is no structure when it comes to the point guard situation in San Antonio. That's how I see it.
Well, all those teams too, respectively. I mean, the league across the board, no one plays defense.
No.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, and guys are getting paid that are averaging 12, 16 points a night, right? And they're making millions of dollars, sometimes max contract with some of these guys. Yeah. We look at some of the offensive numbers. If you look at this losing streak by San Antonio, 132, 137, 121, 121, 122, 124, 120. Absolutely zero defense, right? I believe that's one. I believe it falls on coaching too. But to your point, they're trying to figure out what they have in the face of the franchise. I still believe it's prevalent. It's an issue. Mm-hmm. It kind of goes against everything that Adam Silver was talking about. I mean, hell, your 76ers turn around and they extend Morey, which is hilarious when you think about it, because I don't really think the guy's a good GM. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're extending a guy who was just gung-ho about Harden. You bring him in, it blows up in their face. Right. Now, the Sixers, albeit they're laying, I think, 15 tonight against the Pistons, whatever, what have you. Embiid, Maxey, they're a good team, 16-7, right there with Boston, right there with the Bucks. You know, don't discount what the Magic are doing. I mean, they've great run, 11 out of 13, balanced scoring. We know about their players. But I look at the 76ers, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell would you want to extend this guy when you really haven't gotten out of the second round? And then I look at some of these teams that are playing really bad basketball, where they're going to need to clean house, but it also starts with the GM down to the head coaching. It's like it's a major contract, right? Contrast, pardon me. So I think it's pretty evident teams are tanking, and they're never going to. It's like clear as day to me. I mean, how do you? We'll get into Sixers and Morey in a second, but how do you combat the tanking? Like, how do you prevent teams? Because the excuse can be, well, we're a young team and we're trying to find out what we have. So we know there's going to be growing pains. But to this extent, where you have a professional basketball team or teams lose 17, 20 games in a row, that's just embarrassing.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, what's happening in Detroit is, I mean, when is this streak going to end, right? They have to get a win eventually, right? And so to me, how you combat it? Well, until there isn't right now, there's a reward for being bad, right? So that's the issue. These front offices aren't stupid. They're like, when Vic is coming, when that Vic and Scoot and Brandon Miller year, teams were trying to get in that top 3 spot. The more losses, more ping pong balls you have, right?
But there's a reward for being bad in the NFL, but I don't believe they're tanking because this is my argument, and it drives me crazy, Johnathan. In the NFL, if you tank, if you miss a tackle, if you're lackadaisical, if you're just half-assing it, you're going to get hurt. And plus, if you're a free agent or you're trying to hit incentives, we have film on you. Why is it easier to get away with this in the NBA?
It's a good question. The mentality is definitely different, right? The NBA has guaranteed money, right? So what's the incentive? I'm losing, but the cash direct deposit is going to hit anyway every month. So what's the point? Monty Williams signed that contract, right? You want me to lose these games? Whatever. Like, we're losing. Like, obviously you care, but at the end of the day, money's coming regardless. There's no incentives that you need to hit to guarantee that money for yourself, right? And so just a different mentality, a different situation when it comes to the NBA. And also with the NBA, you know, if we get a LeBron, if we get a Vic, if we get a Giannis, if we strike gold for that top 2, top 3 pick, it can change the direction of our franchise. Sure. The NFL, You need a QB. You need an offensive line, right? There are certain pieces. You
It
need a
takes
D.
a little bit of time. In the NBA,
It's
you
not a
get
it's
that
not a
one
one,
stud.
two draft fix, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? So I think
yeah.
NBA, we can strike it high. If we get a Vic, we can figure out the rest. If we get a LeBron, we can figure out the rest. The NFL,
It's
I
still a bad look, man.
yeah,
I
that's
mean, I
true.
don't listen. I don't care how you slice it or dice it. It's
Yeah,
embarrassing. I mean,
yeah.
I was, the whole let's raise the banner in season tournament. That's a friggin' joke. Uh, I know everyone they enjoyed it. I personally, I was like, all right, whatever. But yeah, I just think these teams right now. I mean, and think about it too. When you think about the NBA, Pistons and the Spurs used to be the franchises, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Detroit. I mean, the '80s, and when they
80s
had
and the
Sheed
90s,
and Tyshawn
sure.
Prince,
Yeah.
Chauncey Billups, that crew,
Yeah,
Rip
yeah, yeah.
Hamilton. We all know
2004,
about the
5.
Spurs,
Yeah. And the
and
Spurs, yeah.
so these used to be franchises that were well run, and now,
Um,
you know,
not so much. Johnathan Marshall hanging out on Q Rich Quinones here. All right, then the two biggest stories that occurred during the week. We'll get into Giannis in a second. I want to get in Draymond Green because this is now I was tweeting at you. I was like, this is ridiculous. 20, 25 games. They bring the hammer down, suspended indefinitely. And I look at this as I know it's very easy to say, well, we hope the player gets help. Golden State wasn't thinking that when they gave him a 4-year, $100 million contract extension, right? But I believe that the Warriors franchise, it's dead. The dynasty, I should say, it's over. Thompson inconsistent once again bench. You got the Draymond Green stuff. You still have Curry in his prime. You don't really have any more building blocks per se. You got the head coach that he's going to come out and support the player, but yet sometimes you also have to be a little more vocal and say, hey, we're not going to tolerate this kind of nonsense. So here he goes. He puts Rudy Gobert in a headlock, and then he's free swinging, a week later. If you are the Warriors, first and foremost, why don't you just cut ties with Draymond Green, try to trade him, try to move him? And then second, and I think you know where I'm going with this, because I actually mentioned it during the night this week on Martinez and Company that I co-host on Tony Bruno Sports Network. If I'm Steph Curry and I realize I got a lot left because even at 35, 36, I can still score with the best of them. Yeah. I'm going up to management and ownership and I'm saying, hey, man, I gave you guys titles, MVP, brought back hoops here. Get me the hell out of here, and trade them. Yeah. And then, of course, for selfish reasons, the first team I think of that has a ton of draft capital would be the New York Knicks. So we'll get into that. How did you know
I knew somewhere we were going to get to the Knicks eventually. So I knew it was going to somehow you would sneak them in there, like added some parsley to a dish. You just had to sprinkle it. I
mean, shit, 15 years you and I have been doing this. So you kind of know the track record. All right. So let's get to Draymond Green. NBA, they had to do it, right? You had to suspend him indefinitely. What's next now for Draymond Green?
My question is, okay, he punched out Jordan Poole, right? Whatever happened after that happened, he comes back, and where was the change? The same John Morant conversation that we had, right? Over and over again, right? At what point can you decide when a person has really made that change, right? So even if there are certain guidelines and
what's the criteria?
Yeah, how can you really tell what's in a person's heart? Have they really changed, right? Because Draymond can go through speaking to the professionals and doing certain whatever they have him doing. Let's say he checks all the boxes. He's ready to come out there. What happens in a playoff game, heat of the moment? A ref or a player gets under his skin. That's the true test. So how do we truly know when Draymond will be ready?
And that's
Draymond will have a change. So this indefinite suspension to me, it's tough to call because we don't really know, first of all, internally what the issue is, right? And is this a quick fix? I don't think it's a quick fix. It's not.
And this is where this fine line of being, quote, politically correct, and you have to walk this line because I just think he's a clown. I do. I think he's a shit stirrer. I just think he's one of those players, right? I mean, and if it comes out he was dealing with stuff, so be it. But I hearken back to when we had these conversations where they have to go and bring pizza to Kawhi Leonard's house, the Ron Artest's, the Meta World Pieces. I was trying to draw a comparison, and I said, it almost reminds me of Rodman late in his career, where he just became this joke. He wasn't the all-time great defensive player and the rebounder we saw with the Pistons, and then even to the Bulls to some extent got a little goofy, and then even with San Antonio. So I'm kind of over the Green stuff, and I feel as though this is just who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can sit there and say we hope he can. Listen, I just, it's remarkable. We talk about athletes, we hope they get, but yet in society we have so many other people that are really struggling with mental illness, and I think it's easy to tag someone and say that guy's got some issues. Right. Is it possible he's just a jerk off and this is who he is and this is how this person plays? It could possibly be that. And I was pulling up the numbers and I looked at it. I think at this point, and you've really brought up in it, you raised a really interesting point, because you're right. Then why did you give him you enabled him by giving him a contract extension and that money, and now you're stuck and you realize that your franchise is becoming a joke. And now you've got poor Curry sitting there, and you have to do right by him. And yes, I bring up the Knicks tongue in cheek because of the capital they have, but man, I can see a scenario where if this goes south in another week or two, what if you're Curry, why do you want to hang around?
Right. I'll talk about Steph, but completing the Draymond talk.
Yeah.
Sometimes what people praise you for and sort of quote, I guess, your greatest attribute to what got you to where you are can be, on the flip side, a major negative, right?
Yeah.
Draymond, his intensity, right? His fire. Not the most talented athletic athlete, but that mentality is what's got him to this point in the first place, right? But also on the flip side, if you don't control it, it manifests itself in how we've seen it, especially as you get older. Things aren't going the way you're used to going. There's frustrations building. It'll heighten even more so. So this has always been Draymond, but sometimes it can get even heightened in certain situations, right?
Well,
so
2016,
right?
He single-handedly changed the course of an NBA Finals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He got in the issue. LeBron, they're up 3-1, out for game 5, and then the Cavs make that historic comeback.
That's true. That is true.
So that's 7 years ago.
Yeah. Like, and once again, in the heat of a moment, a tough playoff series, battling. When he comes back, who's to say he won't do it again? Because we're talking about, like, he's physically, like, he's choking the dudes out. He's smacking dudes. Like, what do we like? At what point do we draw the line and say, like, you can really harm, like, you punched the teammate out? Like, this is assault. If this is out on the street, run up on a guy and choke him out, punch him out, slap him. What is that? Right? Like,
well, we know from playing back in the day.
Right.
I mean, you pull that shit, you're going to get knocked on your ass.
That's what I'm saying. So it's not okay. It has no place in professional basketball. And so this indefinite suspension, to me, I'm just going to wait and see. Like, I'm not, I have no expectations. I don't know how long it's going to go or how short it's going to be, because I don't even know what the issue is or what the solution is, because only Draymond knows that. He has to answer to himself. He has to figure out how he wants to be looked at when it's all said and done. And truth be told, his career is almost over, honestly, right? It's over. It's closer to being over than just beginning. And so he has a few more years left. And at this point, which team is going to want to have that headache on their roster? Because offensively, you're limited. You're not bringing much. You're getting older. And you're a killer of locker room vibes. That's just what it is.
Do you think they would contemplate moving Curry? And do you think Curry would walk into the front office and say, I'm 35, I'm going to be 36, I can still put up points? And I think, listen, I was about to say but the Knicks were one pick away.
Right. Yeah. I think y'all, I feel like y'all would have drafted him. I feel like.
Everyone watched his performance in Davidson and said, this kid's going to be an assassin. Like, can you imagine him in
Yeah.
New York? And again, they've got a substantial amount of assets and they've got some building blocks. Now, again, it's depending upon who you also want to throw in there, Barrett, Brunson, uh, Randall. I don't know. It's for a conversation down the road. But do you believe if this keeps going south, they're only 10 and 14. If this keeps going south, I mean,
It's it's tough.
why not?
It's tough, right? Because even with the Draymond and Klay Thompson situation, right? When across all sports, right? When you've had so much success around a core group, the ending of it, the break is never going to be easy. Like it's just even with the Bulls, the end of their last three-peat, right? How that ended. The Patriots with Bill Belichick, Tom Brady. You can go across all sports.
It never ends good.
It's never going to end well. Either players get older, they're not performing how they should, contract disputes, ownership, like it's never going to end well. And so with the Warriors case, what they tried to do was they tried to compete for championships. They did win, right? They beat the Celtics a couple years ago, but while doing that, they were also trying to develop Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Jordan Poole. And so I don't think we've seen many examples where that works, where you're trying to compete for championships while also developing young guys, because while you're trying to win, maybe these young guys aren't really getting the full attention development that they truly need. And so now Jordan Poole's out of there. Kuminga, Moody, maybe they haven't reached the heights that people want them to at this point. But given the situation, what do you want? What do you expect? They're playing behind Steph and Klay and Draymond Green. These guys are trying to win championships, right? They're not trying to wait for these guys to play through their mistakes. And so the Warriors are in a spot where Draymond and Klay, they're not who they used to be. Steph Curry is still amazing, an MVP level type of player. And so to me, there's only two answers for them. Either you try to go at it one more time and get rid of Klay and Draymond and bring some talented, proven late 20, early 30 guys and try to get one last push at it, or totally strip it down.
I think you strip it down because if you look at the Western Conference, okay, so if you look at the Western Conference, look what's going on in Phoenix. Durant, Booker, and Beal. What the hell is going on? Right. I feel as though the time of let's just start to pluck and try to build the super teams in the NBA, it's always going to occur, but at what percentage of success? Now, me saying get a Hall of Fame player out of a bad situation is not super team per se, right? If these guys were free agents and the Knicks are calling about Durant and Curry and whomever, Embiid, then that's different. But I look at the Western Conference and you're starting to see young teams that we've talked about over the last year plus start to ascend. And you're starting to see the veteran teams hang on for one last shot, right?
Yeah.
One last dance in the sun. Lastly, listen, before I let you get out of here. So what was more bizarre? Was it Green or was it Giannis? And the first thing I'm thinking of when I'm watching this is the scene in White Men Can't Jump when Marquise Johnson, when he knows he got hustled and he goes, nah. He goes, fuck this. I'm going to my car. I'm getting my gun. I'm going to shoot all you mother effers.
Oh,
That's what I
man.
thought of. Like, where do we side here with game ball gate here? The Pacers rubbing it in a little bit. Giannis, does he really have a leg to stand on? Mark Cuban said, hey, I would have taken a picture with the score on a piece of paper like Wilt did.
Yeah.
Forget about the game ball.
Man, the amount of anger that he showed, to me, is it that deep?
That's my whole point, man.
I get it. Okay, it was a special moment. You dropped 60, right?
Yeah.
You want to have something to remember it by. I understand wanting that, but it could have been done in another fashion, right? Like you could have did that behind, go back conversation, but it's like you got to watch Dame's face the whole time. Dame is just like he's so calm and just trying to like, yo, you're tripping. Like, what do we?
How about Giannis's brother? Giannis's brother acting like a madman.
Giannis's brother is the most hilarious guy in the NBA. If you really watch him, he is hilarious. He really, if you rewatch the video, he really didn't want to go out there. He held himself back in a sense. If you really pay attention to what he was doing, the whole situation to me was very unserious. I mean, he's snapping at Tyrese Halliburton, and then Rick Carlisle saying, "Well, our rookie got his first bucket." That was BS, though.
Of course it was.
That was funny. I really think this is a budding rivalry. When it comes to a rivalry building between Milwaukee and Indiana, I'm for it. Indiana beat them in the in-season tournament, so all this showed me was I want to see that in the playoffs. I want to see them play in the play. I want it now.
Well, it proves that some of these younger teams are not going to be pushed around, right? And they're going to try to get under the skin of some, but you can't. I mean, he looked like he was like OJ Simpson running through the airport back in the 70s on that commercial. I mean, he's just breaking tackles, running through, and he looked like a man possessed.
Yeah, it was. I've never seen
it reminded me of George Brett with the Pine Tar incident in '83 with the Royals and the Yankees, where he exploded. He had the look like he had like a death look in his eyes, and this is pretty much a guy that's, I would say, reserved most of the time.
He has his moments.
Yeah. Hey, if the Sixers were to won that joke of an in-season tournament and stuck a banner up.
Listen, for that Sixers franchise, we haven't had too many banners. We got to take them when we can get it. You know what I'm saying? So look, salute. You got to celebrate life's small victories.
Yeah, so much for the Embiid getting traded kind of conversation, right? I still think at the end of the day, I don't believe Embiid's going to win a championship with the Philadelphia 76ers.
You want to get excited about the Sixers and how they're playing. I actually enjoy watching this team more so now that Nick Nurse is the coach. I like seeing. I'm glad Kelly Oubre's back. Tyrese Maxey is still slowly showing people what he can do finally. But where this ends, right? Like
second round bouncing by the Celtics.
Are you better than Boston? Are you better than Milwaukee?
No, I don't think they're better than. I don't even think they're better than Orlando right now.
That would be a scary first round matchup for them. Indiana too, in some ways. So we know where this ends. Like they're in the fourth place right now behind the Orlando. Like once you've shown me who you are repeatedly, I gotta believe it.
Yeah,
it's second round after second round after second round. At some point, you're not gonna fool me again.
That's the old adage in life, right? I mean, you show me who you really are, and I know who you really are, right?
And Simmons isn't there, Doc Rivers isn't there. It's the same story.
Yeah. I was going to say, going to let you wax poetic about your Eagles. Do they rebound against Seattle on Monday night?
Man. We're going to rebound, Q. It took a lot for me to think about that because I don't like what I'm seeing. To me, it's a really soft team right now. We were soft against Dallas, and they were soft against San Francisco on both sides of the ball. And so I'm not liking what I'm seeing. I'm not liking what I'm seeing from the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator, for that matter, both first-year guys in their roles in Philly. And so San Francisco is the team to beat right now in the NFC. They are.
I agree with you. I think they get off the mat. Good teams usually figure out a way to get off the mat, and I actually like them.
How about you? How about the veto?
Yeah, the passing Paisano, the slinging Sicilian.
Yeah, you might got your guy. I think you gave the money to the wrong guy.
No, I mean I think it's ludicrous. People are saying this kid's better than Daniel Jones. I think they dismiss what Daniel Jones did. It's just that Daniel Jones got paid and gets hurt, and this kid's an undrafted free agent. So obviously everyone loves the quarterback or the backup, and we fall in love, and it's a great story, and I'm all for it. I think it's awesome. I can appreciate a kid that, we can relate to guys like this, right? The grinder, hanging around, taking advantage of the opportunity. Yeah. God bless him. He might latch on down the road as a solid backup. He might even show he's a serviceable starter for the rest of his career somewhere.
Yeah.
But let's just pump the friggin' brakes here.
You're in the playoff race, though. You're not eliminated.
Hey, listen, all I want to be is in the hunt. And when it was Halloween, I was not in the hunt. When I see the Giants right on the bottom of the screen that says in the hunt at 5-8, that gives me a little bit of hope. I don't know how much hope though, but
almost Christmas and you guys are in the playoff race. So
hey man, until next week when the Eagles friggin' wax them. He is 40-6. He is Johnathan Marshall at John_Marshall3. Follow him on X. Give some great hoops insight. Also, a sports reporter, anchor at WMUR, and kind enough to join us on Q. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you.